Hey there, guys. Before we get into the podcast today, I just want to share with you a quick clip of my new song, I Think I'm Drinking Tonight, which is now available on Spotify and Apple Music. Let's check it out. Where did you go? Say a prayer and take a shot for those of us who try. I feel alive like an animal, and I think I'm drinking tonight. One day you'll tell me.
Music, motivation, and positively obnoxious. That's me.
It's the Tony Gebhard Show!
Hey guys, this is Tony Gebhard. Welcome to the Tony Gebhard Show, and for today's episode, I got a really cool friend of mine. You know him from Blind Abilities, Jeff Thompson. How you doing?
Doing good, Tony. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thank you for your time and for just considering the opportunity. For me, it's an honor because I've always looked up to you and Pete Lane for podcasting, and if anything, I take a little influence from you, so that's also pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Blind Abilities is probably one of the largest podcasts right now in blindness content. Everything from technology, college, preparations, work readiness, wellness, you name it, everything. Been following the podcast for a number of years now. But, you know, I don't want to just talk about the podcast with you. I really want to get a chance to dive into, you know, what started this trend for you and Pete, and you know, what brought Blind Abilities into the sunlight. Can you talk about that?
Well, Tony, you're a teacher, and I was a teacher too. I taught woodworking and stuff, and it's something about sharing knowledge or experiences with people so they can gain from it and move forwards. And so after I left teaching woodworking, I still did some. I went to San Francisco Lighthouse out there on Beater Mountain and taught at the summer camps for advanced and beginners classes out there during the summer, which was always a neat adventure. So I felt that there was a way to still do it, and it was podcasting. Someone mentioned podcasting to me, and it was like, wow, I wish you would have told that before we got rid of all my music equipment. But I saved my microphone. So that's I had my mic.
Yeah.
And today, you don't need all the big, need a big case with 5 different things to bolt into it, to get your sound out there. It's really neat how it's changed over the last 10 years. Putting out a podcast, putting out 101s, someone new is coming into blindness all the time.
Sure.
It's 101. And we didn't want to get on a podium and start going up the ladder like, oh, this is 301. What are you asking this question for? Go back to school. Right. So we wanted to be there for the beginners, the newly blind, those who haven't been exposed to some of the equipment and stuff like that. So I actually started over on Audio Boo. Then it changed to Audio Boom and had a Blind Abilities channel.
That's funny. I haven't heard about that service in a long time. I created an account from what I remember, but I abandoned it after like 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
It's still running?
No, it's changed its whole platform. And when it went through its changes and stuff, it felt like our foundation was on sand. So we started putting it onto a .com, which seemed pretty solid because then you could have a place. Then you could control if that place sinks or swims, But Audio Boom was pretty cool. We had over 775,000 downloads.
Wow.
Which, that uploads, downloads, it was a conversation. It was kind of like Clubhouses today, but you're not all in the room at the same time.
Right.
You just respond to people's messages back and forth and stuff. And it's audio. So that was really cool. And so I started doing some skits on there just for fun because there were no rules or anything. And it was really fun to start experimenting. I went and got my first Mac. And because my PC screwed up and I got a Mac and I started learning how to mix and I started doing, it just started getting into it. And it was really fun. And so when we decided to put it on the rock solid foundation, Pete Lane sent me a demonstration that he did that he wanted me to post, and I asked how he did it, and he was moving his phone between a speaker and a microphone, balancing it on a table, trying to. That, this was primitive stuff back
Yeah,
then.
this is character building right here.
And I told him,
Yeah.
I said, "Have you ever heard of? You're running a Mac. Have you ever heard of Amadeus Pro?"
Oh, there you
And he
go.
said, "No." So
That's a fun one.
I got him going on Amadeus. I mean, and he took off with it. I'm not giving credit for all he knows. Believe me, he went his own route. We're both two different types of people, but I got him going on that. And once he got to a point where he could edit and do a few things here and there, I took the time to build the website. And everything takes time for all this stuff. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
I built a website. We got going. We got established. We're somewhere. We had blindabilities.com and we're off and going. That's why our first podcast was called In the Beginning.
In the
because
boog.
because of
I
and we
love
brought on
that.
some people from there. But as it
Yeah.
got going, we start making Blind Abilities our own, and I kept going. And over the years, things changed a little bit. 101s. And the thing about tech, if you do a tech on an iPhone 4, who cares about it when the iPhone 6 comes out?
Right.
So
Everything
some of these are
changes.
it just disposes. And after a while, Pete had family stuff, and I kept going, started diversifying a little bit, getting different shows. We had the Tech Ability shows with Serena, Callie, Seun, and then
Oh, yeah.
Wilderness Wednesday came along with Beth and Robin, and they're two therapists out in Colorado and stuff, which is a good dose. When you edit something, you got to listen to it 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So I get my free therapy every month. And then you mentioned jobs and all that stuff. We had Job Insights, and that was with Serene, Sarli, and Daisha. So we've had quite a few different types of shows going all the time, on and off. It's a well-rounded type of library of podcasts that you'll find there.
Well, and it's cool because you're building the community. You've built a strong network of professionals and like-minded people who have the same intention, the same morale compass, right? To extend a hand of knowledge, but also connect newly blind people with seasoned pros or just resources. And I think that's like one of the biggest things in demand, especially now post pandemic.
Yeah, because when you're newly blind and looking out there in your future, in your globe, your sphere, your magic
Yeah, yeah.
ball, where's your path leading? And then when you see down the road there that other people have succeeded in these fields or this area, or how are they doing that? You cock your head a little bit, and you dig in. And I think it's inspiration a little bit for people to realize that it's not all gloom and doom, because sometimes you might be in a situation where, where do they keep the blind?
Yeah.
You don't know. That was my first question to my counselor. I didn't know anybody who was blind when I first lost eyesight.
And that's usually the common thing. I've been working in rehabilitation myself. When we work with people who walk through our door, generally speaking, we're the first group of blind people that they've ever met. And, it sets the tone and expectation of what's going to happen, whether it be, employment, education, or just general skills training, right? So that's fascinating, which I love, because in some senses, when you compile everything that Blind Ability stands for, you've got a rehabilitation in a digital platform. I mean,
Yeah.
because you've got your post-secondary resources, you've got your skills training demonstrations, your 101s, and when you categorize everything, I mean, there's a resource center right there, and it's free.
I just want to say thank you, because sometimes you do this and you wonder where it's going, what have you done, and when someone else sees that, it's like, yeah, that was the goal, and that was
Yeah.
the goal. So it's nice to hear, Tony.
I look back before I got into rehabilitation myself as a professional, when I was couch surfing and doing whatever drifters do. Blind Abilities was a podcast I still today have saved on my podcast now. And every time a new episode comes out, I always take the time to listen to it, because I know what I'm getting is quality. and I know what I'm getting is, genuine knowledge from people who have this just crazy ambition to be better, and to share their charisma with the world. For me, I'm kind of like a kid in a candy shop. Like, oh my gosh, I got Jeff in the studio today. This is freaking awesome, because because being on your show really motivated me to use my voice. You inspired me in some ways to start my own podcast, because now I understand the true positive feeling that encompasses your own platform, or being able to just reach out there and share my experiences as a person with a disability with others, right? Because the Tony Gebhard Show, what this platform stands to be is to bring successful and or success stories to the limelight, or the spotlight rather, and really represent people who get it done, people who get in front of a microphone, get in front of a camera, get in front of a job interview and say, I did this, I got this, right? We had Scott McIntyre on in season 1 from American Idol, Liam Irvin in beginning of season 2, and Jessica Tyna from out in Denmark, who just won the GitHub Accelerator Award and is on the Accelerator program right now. I mean, these are just world-renowned people who are in the same shoe aisle as all of us, and these people out here, as you mentioned, and as we were talking about, people who need to hear a real story from a real person, who was able to face adversity one way or another, and now is making 6 figures, or who is got a full scholarship to whatever school that they want. You fill in the gaps.
Yeah. Yeah. I just have to say, people all have different drives. And as a teacher, when students came in, I could sense their drive. And it was exciting for me as a teacher to facilitate. They come in for a pit stop at a training center, and it's like, new tires. You're just going to get this car back out on the track because they're going someplace. Yeah. And you can just sense it. So it's nice to add to their arsenal of tools that they'll need or have at their accessibility to use if they desire to use it. You never know what they're going to be doing. And that's really cool. It's really cool to sense this. So when I'm listening to success stories, sometimes it's overwhelming, like they climbed Kilimanjaro, but everybody has a Kilimanjaro. Everyone has a mountain they got to climb, whether it's little Timmy down the street learning, 2nd grade Braille, or, overcoming, transitioning from 1st grade to 2nd grade Braille, and that's a milestone,
Yeah.
that's another step, so, and I think that's what I tried doing behind Blind Abilities, is keeping all our mountains attainable, but always looking over the next little hill that you come to. What's next?
Right,
what's
yeah.
next? Just to keep that going. And I think that's where drive comes in. And I think the teaching experience. I don't like the saying that teaching is for those who couldn't do something else. It was just a knack for me, because I always worked, when I was sighted, I worked on teams where I was a lead pressman. I had a feeder and then a helper. If I could
Right.
teach my feeder to do my job, he did a better job at his job because he would help me do my job. It's just,
yeah.
and if I called in sick one day, they might be able to at some point fill it. Then they know what I'm going through, so they understand what I need to do my job, so they can do their job better.
Right.
So teamwork and all that stuff. So teaching to me is, if you can share your experiences, gosh, that really puts a person a step forward in their beginning of their journey.
Amen to that. Yeah. Well, this kind of brings up, the whole idea of what success is, right? This is like a hot topic that seems subjective to the individual or the situation, right? So if I were to ask you, what is your idea of success? Like, what does that encompass for your journey?
Oof.
That's like the hardest question to answer.
Oh,
Somebody
yeah.
asked me that the other day. I said, "Give me a minute. I'll get back to you on that." Like,
I would rather answer the question, why is there air?
right?
um, Success.
Yeah.
I think
What is success?
I think success is something that you can say, I'm content
Mm,
that you tried to do something. And if you don't try, then you always wonder. But if you actually go through with it and try and do something and succeed or get to another spot where, wow, this grade 2 is pretty good.
yeah.
I can
Right.
read faster and the books come in half the size. That's success in a sense. I think success isn't a big picture. It's not a
Right.
huge big. You got to remember, like our rookie quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings is going in there and he has to play one play at a time and then the next play and then the next. And that's just like in life. And that's just like in blindness skills, learning skills and stuff. It's learning one thing, then moving to the next. And then slowly along your journey, along your path, you start putting all these little trinkets together and you don't even notice it. You're just moving along
Mm,
and doing what you want to do. So success is something that actually it's like a shadow around you while you're busy doing other things, and slowly your life experiences, the ideas you're gathering all come together. And that's where success kind of lands, but it isn't a place. I don't
right.
think it is a place. I think it's like a shadow.
Well, you say contentment, right? And for lack of better phrases, like microdosing. You count the little things, the small incremental steps that you've been able to take as you move towards, a goal or an objective that you're trying to meet in that process. So, using this Braille analogy, someone who is reading grade 1 at 50 words a minute is being tested, but now can read at 75 words a minute, right? So there's an example of success. But now they're moving on to grade 2, reading at 30 words a minute. That's still better than grade 1, 70 words a minute. Even though it looks different, there's still a greater accomplishment on moving on to a more complex, structure and the
Mm-hmm.
contractions and all this. So it's really interesting. Success is, as you really eloquently put it, is not a place, or it's not winning the Braille challenge every year. It's being able to be nominated, or maybe it's being able to, my wife, she's the fastest Braille reader I know. She can read at 175 words a minute. It's ridiculous. And I look at her and is like, "Are you proud of that? Like, this is ridiculously good." She's like, "I could always do better." And I'm like, "What?" To me that's wild, because I'm over here like I can read maybe at 75 words a minute in second grade Braille. I'm not the fastest draw in the West.
You hand her the Braille menu.
Yeah, I hand her the Braille menu, right? She's got the Braille display out at all times. Like, she's just super good. She's really good at it. But no, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. But so let's talk about this. So in the generation that we have now, podcasts are like the number one medium, like one of the biggest mediums of digital content that people are consuming nowadays. And I was asked this question on another podcast actually about 2 weeks ago. So I want to pass the torch to you and ask, if someone comes right with an idea, but they don't know where to go to start a podcast. I bet you've been asked this question already, so I understand and I'm ready for it. But I want to know, from your angle, what's your advice to new podcasters? What's your advice to people really wanting to establish themselves and create their own empire? like blind abilities, or like just from that angle, what would you throw onto them?
It's time consuming.
Ain't that the truth, man?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it right out there. It's time consuming. How much time do you like sitting in a chair in front of a computer editing? But it depends on what you like in audio. My thing about audio is quality audio, and that's what sells, I believe, in a sense. Some people may have other different things they look for, content. I mean, if the astronauts radioed home and said, one giant leap for, no one said, what kind of microphone are they using? It was all content.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
all content.
yeah. So if you have great content, people are going to listen. And I think that's knowing your audience. So you have to balance that out. Who are you? I don't say preaching, but who are you? Who is your audience?
Yeah.
What kind of content do they want? Why are they coming through you to get that content? And I think that's everything. Then once you have that down, then you start thinking about the audio, the quality. I mean, we don't have video, so we try and get the audio good.
Right.
And sometimes we need editing. Not everybody that you interview is a great speaker. And sometimes you might have to take out the ums, ahs, and other things and take a 40-minute interview and bring it down to 28 or something.
Right.
Without missing a word, in a sense. And that's doing it for the listener, because they're listening and they're gaining from the information that's being passed on. And yeah, so it's a lot of time consumption. If you're good on the microphone and YouTube is a thing that you want to try or something like that, you drop the mic at the end of the show and that's it. That's published.
Yeah, there you go. That's all, folks.
Some people have that radio talent that they can banter for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and it's good. And, I wish everybody had that, because then podcasting would be easy for people.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up. When I look back at the roster for the TG show, my sister, actually, she's a business enterprise program alumni, and she's just killing it. Like, we're talking six figures, everything. But she, no offense to you, Andrea, I love you, but your episode was definitely one for the books to edit. And it goes to show, right? She's gonna probably be like, "Why did you do that on my show?" But you're absolutely right. You can really tell the overall just cadence in people's voices. You can tell who's people shy or microphone shy, and it's not an uncommon thing. But as you said, it would make our jobs way too easy if everybody was.
Another thing is, I found out over the years, is I can interview someone at the top of the food chain, someone, a high corporate person, and they're talking into their PC. That's here's a microphone. They got that old stick that used to sit right on the desk and point towards you or something. Yeah. They have, because that's not in their wheelhouse. They're just speaking, and they think this stuff works that way and stuff. So, but you get down to a 14-year-old kid in some state, I won't name a state and pick anybody out. I'm just saying, he's got a $400 microphone. He's got a mixer. He's got, some of these kids, young adults, have some equipment that is like, wow, you've been listening to some good shows and figuring stuff out. Whatever they're doing, but that's maybe what they wanted to do, or maybe they have an ear for that. And
sure,
so it's really interesting, especially people in music like you. The microphone is part of a daily equipment for you.
Sure, yeah. It's the transition point, or it's the medium that helps communicate or help draw out the feeling in a lot of ways, and more. As we go on, when I look around at my peers or those that I mentor that are younger than me, everyone's got their, all this equipment. Everyone's got these desires and, just this big ambition to be content creators, or, to find a way to use that transmission. And, the one thing that I've always passed on to them that, I'm wondering what your take on this is, people will talk the talk a lot, but the thing that I find to be unique is, everyone always wants a guidebook to how things are done, right? Each step of the way. But from my experience, I had been talking about doing a podcast for over 10 years and I didn't get anywhere with it until last year. I had this just fun idea. I was like, oh, what about the TG show or something? And here we are. We're going to hit our first year on December 30th,
Wow, I made it to the first year.
Yeah, I did.
Well, you make a good point there. The desire to do it and all that stuff that leads to equipment. You do not need to go out and spend $2,000 on equipment to start out. No. What you want to find out is, let's try and make a podcast. Let's do 1, 2, 3 of them and see what's working. And you can go out and buy a $75 microphone, an interface for $150, something like that. And probably have a computer that'll work, and then you got to figure out where you're going to put it. Are you going to get a website, or are you just going to put it up on as a podcast? No website. There you go. So there's, because once you get a website, then you have monthly costs. Yeah. And then once you start, okay, I'm going to use this thing. Then you got to subscribe to get, there's $17 a month. There's this, it starts adding up. It's like people who cut the cable and start buying all these streaming things. Pretty soon they're going, wait a second.
I thought I was saving money. Like, no, HBO, Netflix, and Hulu all at once is about as much as you'd be spending for DirecTV. Yeah.
It's funny that way, but it adds up, because once you publish to a website and say you have Libsyn where you're going to host your files or something, if you stop, they disappear, so it's like you got to keep this thing going and see how it goes for you, and then evaluate it. And for people, I tell this to people about money in podcasts. They always say, well, then I can get advertisers and then I can get sponsors. And if that's what you're going for, that's a whole different ballgame. This is a niche market, and I would say, if it has, Tony has the teaching skills. He likes teaching. I do the same thing. Pete did too. I find that people who are doing podcasts in the blind world for the blind it's a passion. They feel like they're doing something, and that's what they get out of it. I wish there was more feedback out there in the world.
Wouldn't that be fun, huh? I think I've made 1 cent in the past year. So it's a passion, right?
At that rate, let's see. Yeah.
So here's a big question. This is kind of a feel free. We don't have to talk about this if it's too deep, but I'm curious from an entrepreneur's perspective. Does Blind Abilities generate revenue?
We do not generate revenue from any outside source. We don't, but we got this new SL interface right here that you could use today.
There you go.
We never did advertising on the show. I'm coming up on 980 podcasts.
Wow.
Wow. I'm not going to taint it any, there's no reason to look for a sponsor. I've had many requests for people to do sponsorships and what does it cost and all that stuff, but I just didn't want to.
You don't want to open that floodgate.
Yeah. And then I'd have to switch around, and then people would start questioning it. Well, and then would I be direct on how to, what to do, how to script?
The moment you start taking, revenue or just a monetary exchange, now there's an obligation and expectation suddenly thrusted onto the mission, right? And that can change a lot of things. So go ahead.
Well, what I suggest, if you want to try and make money, get your skills up there, get really good at doing skills, and people will come to you to do their podcast. Well, so if you can become someone who, say you like to edit a lot, well, there's people who don't like to edit a lot. Find something that people don't like to do, and there's an opportunity. And I think editing in podcasting, editing is probably the biggest consumption of one's time.
Oh,
So
for sure.
if you got good editing skills, you're marketable.
Oh, there you go. Entrepreneurial 101 right there. Find something that nobody else wants to do.
There you go.
That's awesome. Well, and thank you for answering, that question, because that kind of transparency really shows that blind abilities sole foundation is on passion and passion alone for bringing quality content on a quantitative level for people who need, just by a few taps, those 101s and those Wellness Wednesdays, which I love. I love Wellness Wednesdays. That's a great program. And other tidbits that are thrown into the mix. Tech abilities, as you mentioned earlier, also a great side show, and just all the people that I've had the privilege to meet, as well as just see come in and around your circuit of community members, has been just top notch, humble, and very, very approachable people. So it's
when I met Tony Gebhard, it was like this musician that could shred a guitar, and then his keyboards, then his drumming. I tell you, you got some of the best drums on there. I've heard that from other people too.
Oh, thank you.
Not to take away from anything else, but the way you put together music and albums and everything like that. I just had Tony Gebhard on my show, and I'd send it to my son who loves that style of music. He's kind of a mix in genres, but that's one of his areas.
Oh, nice.
And he's like, whoa, he's pretty good. Like I said, yeah, he's playing every instrument, dude. And he's like, no way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How fun.
Yeah. So that the meeting musicians to me is really fun, because I started out recording musicians, and that's why I had some equipment that I got rid of. And then someone told me about podcasts. And so it's always nice to bring on different musicians that are around the country here, actually around the world, really.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. It's so funny. Every time we sit down to have a conversation, whether it be in podcast form or just general chatting, we end up just interviewing each other. I find that hysterical sometimes. It's I guess it's the nature of the beast.
Well, if you put two clockmakers together, what are they going to talk about?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, tell me this. Let's talk technicalities, right? Because I got a few geeky listeners out there who want to know, what are you using for gear?
Right now, I'm using a Shure microphone, a KSM 27. It's a vintage one in a sense, because we're older. They don't make the 27, they make the 32 now to replace that zone in the microphones. It's a large diaphragm condenser microphone. And I'm using the SSL 2 as my interface.
Ooh.
And that plugs right into my iMac. I have a 27-inch iMac, which is kind of the first thing I bought. And so I've always replaced it with that. And it doesn't have, like right now, there's a piece of foam, 3-foot piece of foam, 2 pieces technically, running straight behind my microphone over the iMac. It's buried behind there. So I don't even see that. And yeah.
And is that your main podcasting rig? Would you say? Is that
yes.
Okay, that's super cool. Now, when you interviewed me for the first time in 2018 down in Orlando, you were using some portable gear. What were you using at the time?
Oh, let's see. There's the Shure microphone that used to plug into the iPhone, and that's the 88. Wow. That's been a while since I've had to plug that in. It's Shure makes a microphone that you can plug right into your iPhone, but knowing that they just switched over to the C, I don't know if they're going to keep that microphone around for that. The MV88 is what it was called. That's it. MV88. There's another one that I could have been using too at the same time would have been the Zoom H1,
Oh,
which is a
there you go.
handheld.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I
that's
had one of those.
basically a one button, press one button, and then if you can manage the handling of it just without re-gripping your hand a few times, it
Right.
works pretty good. There's some settings on the back where you can record an MP3 WAV. You can have it auto set the mic and stuff, but I usually just keep that flat, everything flat. And, I would say most about microphones is proximity.
Mm,
If you're in a room with very little um, fabric type of deal, if it's echoey, get closer to it, because you're going to beat the echo from getting back.
right.
um,
Right.
so, and if you're starting out, think about your room, draw the curtains, pull the shades. If you have blankets on the bed, make sure they're there. If you have carpet, that's good. Stuff like that. If you have a closet full of clothes, open the doors to it. It'd be
Mm,
like it won't bounce back like your closet doors. It'll bounce back. So, like right now, since I'm being interviewed and Tony's doing all this, I decided, well, I'll give him the best I can. So I put up my foam, which I just mentioned. It runs right now. It's nice foam. I wouldn't say it's cheap, but I usually had it on the wall. But
there
I
you
took
go.
it down off the wall because I can pull it up and put it on when I need it. And I like it better that way.
Yeah, and you
So
sound great. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what it, as for equipment, Amadeus Pro is what I use on the Mac.
That was going to be my
It's
next question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for about $75. You can get this program and it's totally accessible. Totally, you can do everything. Everything Blind Abilities has been done with Amadeus Pro.
Wow.
And
There
other
it
people
is,
have
right there.
switched with Reaper and other things. Reaper is good. It's great. A lot of people are using it, especially musicians are using it. But I think this is if you're just using a Mac, this works for me, and that's what I can speak of. And yeah, uh,
There you go.
the other thing is, if you've ever played with tape recorders as a kid and stuff, and always thought about doing weird commercials or skits and stuff like that, podcasting is kind of like that because you get to bring an intro in. You might have an effect, a transition and stuff. So you get to be creative, and that comes from inside you. It's not taught by a book like Tony was talking about. There is no book on any of this because everybody's different, and your personality comes out in your podcast, and that's what happens.
Yeah, and there's no rules. You create the free speech environment, right?
Hmm.
And you get to create, as you said, the intros, the outros, the fun effects. Are you doing this Joe Rogan style where you just sit and have a conversation, or are you approaching this like NPR? There are leaders in this that have set a stage for different templates and themes, but at the end of the day,
Hmm.
right, it comes down to intuition and, as you said, personality.
Like NPR, it always sounds like you're talking to someone, and the kid is sleeping 10 feet away.
Right. Yeah.
You got to be quiet.
Yeah, exactly. Live from NPR, right?
You can't wake everybody up.
No, absolutely not. Well, it's so funny. I used to have a coworker that would have NPR on every single morning in their office, and I'd walk by and I'd make fun of him all the time for it. It's like, live from the Alaska Center for the Blind. This is NPR.
Coming to me from Alaska. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're coming to me from Minnesota. You're a 6-hour flight away, my friend. I was actually just in Minneapolis.
I saw that you posted something that
Yeah,
you're hop skipping across the country.
yeah, oh yeah. No, I was down in Michigan before we hit record. We were talking about my father, who had passed. He had his memorial service down in Michigan, so I was blessed to be able to attend that and was able to stop over in Minneapolis on the way back. And I gotta say, I used to not be the biggest fan of the Minneapolis St. Paul airport, but recently I started to taking a liking to it for its easy convenience. It's easy to get around. And I recently found out And I know this is subjective because I know some people may not agree with this, but I read that Minneapolis was the #1 favorited airport in America for a little while, and supposedly Detroit just took that spot, which is crazy to think about. Detroit took it.
It sounds like they're getting these ratings from the standings of the NFL right now. Detroit's in first place. Minnesota
isn't that
second.
crazy? The Lions have made this weird little comeback. I
like it.
I do too. I do too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a huge sports guy, but I'm a standing believer that I think coaching has everything to do with the direction of the team, and then the other 10% or 50%, however you want to, divide it, is the team itself. But I don't know.
Well, when I lost my eyesight, just before I did, my cousin sent me 2 tickets to go to Lambeau Field, and they were playing Detroit Lions and Barry Sanders. I tell you, if he by halftime he already had 100 yards, but I swear he had over 300 if you counted how he ran left to right.
Oh man,
that guy would run 30 yards to gain 7.
Wow.
I mean, he was like a cat dashing all over the place, just,
right.
Oh yeah, and there he is, all of a sudden 100 yards. What?
Right. Yeah, it's crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, Detroit. That's when I really liked Barry.
Now, is Detroit in the playoffs right now? Did they make it to the playoffs?
No, because they got Minnesota in the way right now. Not
Oh.
really, but they're in first place. They're doing really well. Minnesota just lost their quarterback, and
man, in the day.
But there we go, digressing again.
I know. My goodness gracious. See, that's what happens when you and I are in the same meeting space. Oh man, but Jeff, it's already almost been an hour. Can you believe that?
Yeah. And Tony, I just want to say thank you so much. From a teacher, I remember watching your going through the world. What was it? How do you say that? The school you went to.
Oh, World Services for the Blind. Yeah.
That's
WSB.
it. I didn't want to goof that up. I remember you went through there and I was like, huh. I was just like, And then you came out of there and you went to Alaska, and it was just really neat to see your growth. And I still remember your description of that bridge up there on the hiking trail, and you made that the picture of your album.
Oh yeah, of guided. Yeah, that was a huge symbol of just the beauty of life and feeling guided by nature, or guided by morals, or guided by failures. Even I think is really what that album was all about. But
I really took from that. That was really neat because
that's awesome. I love that so much.
The thing is, blind abilities may have been what it was, what it is, what it's going to be, but I don't know what it's going to be just as much as the next podcast. I don't know. The next one. It's
always,
how
they say we're only as good as our last, you've heard that phrase,
But if you're driven, like I know you are, this podcast is going to be the next one. The next one's going to be better. The next one's going to be better because you're going to put all those little pieces of information that you learn along the way, just like we talked about success, and it all comes back around, and it's life's journey. Never stops.
There you go. How does AI play a role right now for you, your career, your personal life? Chat GPT, Dolly AI, Stable Diffusion, any of these artificial intelligence technologies, have you used them, and have they at all been an impact?
Yes. Chat GPT I use and I subscribe to for $20 a month. And I'll put in there like Mediterranean diet. And then I'll say a dinner, a recipe. Send me a recipe. So, and it's really easy because you can almost just talk to it because there's a speak mode too. But if you ask, I like it in text, I just dictate in there. I said, give me a Mediterranean style dinner and throw a recipe along with it. and I get these recipes, and I just made this chicken and a Greek salad type of thing. Great. And this morning I had a Mediterranean breakfast one, and who knew I would know what quinoa was, let alone spell it. So there I am. I had quinoa this morning, and I put on top of it a dollop of garlic. Oh no, a dollop of yogurt with strawberries, blueberries, cut cherry tomatoes, some olives sliced up and drizzled on some extra virgin olive oil mixed in with some lemon juice. And I'm sure there's a couple more things that I left. Oh, a cucumber is in there too. And I was adding all this stuff in there, and I'm like, wow, who's going to eat all this? Just, and I took a bite, and it's like, wow, it's just a burst of flavors in your mouth. It's just like, wow. So it's a trend that I'm doing right now, but I'll use it for that. I used it for my butterfly garden. I asked what kind of flowers would bees and butterflies like, and my garden's this big, and I want to start out with a 1 foot row, a 2 foot row, a 3 foot, and a 4 foot. And it gave me a suggestion, and I brought that list right up to the gardener, and they said, well, we got this, and I very successfully did a butterfly pollination garden this year.
Wow. Congratulations. Well, that's the beauty, right? Just the free, I don't even know, like, it's hard to find the words for it, because GPT has ultimately changed the way of accessibility. I mean, AI in general. We're seeing Be My AI with Be My Eyes. And even Chat GPT 4 has it built into their interface now. If you're subscribed, as you said, $20 a month. This is not an endorsement, but yeah, you can subscribe to Chat GPT for $20 a month, gain access to the GPT-4 model and newer features as they are rolled out. And you can upload a photo directly from the web interface or the app, the Chat GPT app, and ask it to describe it to you. And it is just fantastic. Like nothing like we've seen before.
I use it. I mean, I would have to sit there for an hour or 2 hours and decipher what Google found for me, and go through so many different web pages that could have accessibility issues and stuff like this. This way I get some information that I decide if I want to use.
Right.
It's not 100%. It's not full fact. And if I don't make it till tomorrow, look up Chat GPT and don't ever have that Mediterranean breakfast again. but I'm learning from it. It's just like when you get ready to write a report for something, I would say, yeah, go use that stuff, get that information, put it into your head, get an idea. It casts about you're casting for fish, and use some of it in a sense that now you're about ready to put your paper together. But you got to go get resources. You got to get other things. But it gets your mind in the game. And that's what I like about it.
There you go. I already have an idea of what we can call today's episode. I'd be like, a morning with Jeff Thompson, blind abilities and the most random of Mediterranean cuisines. Oh my gosh. Well, look, Jeff, today was a real treat and a privilege. Just every time we get a chance to sit down and talk, I feel 10 times better than I did before we started. You're a great friend and just an incredible asset to the blind community and everything that you, Pete, and all the others are doing with blind abilities. And you should be proud. And be sure to listen to the Blind Abilities podcast anywhere you get podcasts, blindabilities.com. Jeff, did you have anything that you wanted to throw onto the listeners before we go?
Listen to the TG podcast. There's a lot of episodes out there. I went through the list and I'm going, whoa, Tony's been busy. Good stuff, Tony.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, my friends, how do I always leave you? Always know that you are loved and you are valued, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Hey there, friends. Just want to say thank you for listening to today's episode of the Tony Gebhard Show. And if you want to support the show, biggest and easiest way that you can do that is by going to the podcast itself on Apple or Spotify and leaving a review. They really, really help the show. Huge. Big time. Give me a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, or you can give me a 1 star if you really hate it. Okay, I won't be offended, but leave me a review if you could and share it with a friend who may need to be introduced to hearing one of these stories from somebody who is making their way through their life on a journey that may be relatable to your very own. So, thank you for listening to the show, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.